Zou dat mogen?
Cannon demonstration de canon, approchez-vous, come closer. Wie waren de Nederlandstaligen hier? Ik weet niet of jullie Engels is.
Ja, prima. Ja.
Hij kan het ook in de twee doen, hè, maar als het
Nee
lukt.
hoor, Engels is prima voor.
Eén taal is gemakkelijker dan twee. Als er iets niet duidelijk is, zeg het maar. Right, welcome everyone here in front of our beautiful 4-pounder cannon. So this is a replica of a French 4-pounder cannon. Now 4-pounder refers to the weight of the cannonballs that it used to fire. This cannon fired these big iron cast cannonballs that weighed 4 pounds, which today is around 2 kilograms. However, this cannon is the smallest cannon in the French artillery. Right next to the 4, you also have the 6, 8, all the way up to 12 pounders. These were cannons almost twice the size of this one that fired these big round cannonballs that weighed around 6 kilograms. Now you have to understand that these cannonballs, they do not contain any black powder. And often in the movies you see when we fire these cannons and they hit the ground, they explode. That is not true. These are pure iron cast with no explosives. So what do we do instead? We fire these cannons horizontally. Why? The idea is to make these cannonballs ricochet, bounce off the ground. The more bounces we have, the more distance we can traverse, and of course, the more casualties we can inflict. The soldiers back in the day, they marched shoulder against shoulder, multiple lines deep, so the more bounces, the more dead and wounded we can create on the battlefield. Now, as you may know, Napoleon will start his military career as an artillery officer. Someone that fires these cannons, so he will use these cannons massively and a massive amount in a very efficient and deadly way. During the Napoleonic Wars, the amount of cannons used will skyrocket during this period, and so the same will be here at Waterloo. Here at the Battle of Waterloo, where Wellington will only have around 150 cannons, Napoleon is here with 250 cannons lined up, ready to blast Wellington off this hill. To be clear, Napoleon doesn't use these small cannons, that's for the lesser generals. He uses bigger 6, 12 pounders on the battlefield. And so 80 of the biggest cannons of Napoleon will just line up over there, next to La Belle Alliance where Napoleon stood. However, we are still in Belgium. Now we like to make a little jokes about the Belgian weather. What do we always say about Belgium? It is always what in Belgium? En wat zeggen we, het is altijd wat? It is always raining in Belgium. Wat zeiden for Napoleon? That will be the case. Where the evening and the night before the battle, it will start pouring. Pouring rain the whole night long. So much so that in some places the soldiers will be above their knees in the mud. Now what is going to happen with these famous cannons of Napoleon? Cannons that weigh between 600 kilograms and 1 ton, they will completely sink into the mud. They were completely stuck in the mud halfway through. And so Napoleon has two options. He either continues the attack in the morning without his cannons, or he waits. Napoleon, uncharacteristically for him, will decide to wait. But he will have to wait hours and hours. It will only be at around midday, very late to start a battle, that the ground will be dry enough to finally position his cannons and start the bombardment and the battle. He starts bombarding the British Allied center, but then what does he see? Well, his cannons are a lot less effective. The British Allied troops put themselves on top and behind the hill to be better covered, but also with the mud. What is going to happen with the cannonballs and the mud? They get completely stuck in the mud. They will not be able to properly bounce, ricochet off the ground, making it so that the famous French cannons of Napoleon were a lot less effective here at Waterloo. Still very deadly, but a lot less effective than normally. Now, the British will have the same problem, but they are defending. And also, when the enemy approaches, we are going to use another type of ammunition called canister shot or grape shot. Anyone ever shot with a shotgun before? Or a hunter's rifle? A buckshot, what type of ammo is that? What happens with that shot? It's all these small bullets that spread in all directions, as hagel. Well, we did the exact same thing with these cannons. Where with canister shot, we filled up this tin can with a couple of 10 up to 100 of these small bullets, and then when the enemy approaches at around 300 meters, we blast it, spreading all these bullets apart. These troops packed against each other are mowed down in the lines, and tearing through multiple lines, mowing down 10s up to 100 soldiers. This will be heavily used by the British Allies during the French infantry and cavalry attacks here during Waterloo. Now, are there any more questions about all that before we continue? Well, if not, I invite you to stay here or go behind if you want to protect yourself a bit. Now, I wouldn't advise standing in front of the cannon though. We will not fire any real cannonballs. There are too many complaints from the farmers. However, we still fire a live round of black powder. There is still smoke coming out, so do not stand in front of the cannon. Except if there's any British, then feel free to stand in front. But for the rest of you, please stay here for your safety. Take videos, photos if you like, and if you want to protect your ears a bit, you can close one ear and open the mouth against the pressure of the explosion, and afterwards I'll be back for more explanation. Thank you and see you later.
Nee, ik kom met op gestoofd. Ik kom met op gestoofd. Nee, dat meneer niet.
On va commencer la démonstration. Si vous voulez avoir une meilleure vue, vous pouvez vous mettre ici. Tant que vous restez bien là, il n'y a pas de problème. Profitez du spectacle. On va faire un petit peu de bruit, donc n'hésitez pas à toucher les oreilles. Nous, on va faire vraiment le bouchon. En réalité, le terminé s'ouvre comme les artilleurs. En fait, alors, you know, comme vous voulez, et sinon on se retrouve à la fin.
Es wird laut.
Adieu! À poste! Équilibré! Approvisionné! Appelé! Dégagé! Amassé! Yes! Fait! Attention, fait! Bam! Côté achter!
Vive l'empereur!
Et vive l'empereur! Voilà, so, ladies and gentlemen, this was a shot with this small 4-pounder. So let me repeat, this is the smallest cannon in the French artillery. And now we also didn't use a lot of black powder. And now you only use the meager 100 grams. You have to imagine back in the day for these cannons, we fired with up to 600 grams. For the bigger 12-pounders, it could go up to 1 kilo, 1.5 kilo. So imagine this explosion, but 10 times the amount used. And of course not one meager cannon, but hundreds of these. 150 British, 250 French. We are talking about more than 400 plus cannons that blast at each other at a rate of around 1 to 2 shots a minute. And now we were only with 2, so quite slow. But for these small cannons we were normally with 6 to 8 men. For the bigger 12-pounders we were up to 15 per cannon. so that every single front seat is run by one single soldier, and so that we are most efficient on the battlefield. Second place. The other side caught fire. My slow fuse that is a bit too efficient. But there we go. So normally we can fire these cannons at 1 up to 2 shots a minute. So 6 to 8 for the small cannons, up to 15 people per cannon. Now we fire this cannon without a cannonball. If we would have fired a cannonball, what would have happened with our cannon?
Going back.
Inderdaad, terugslag. Recoil. And not a bit. The whole cannon could be pushed back 1 up to 2 meters. So when you fire this beastie, you make sure that you're not standing behind your cannon, if you don't want to get crushed by your own cannon. So that's why we say attention feu, to make sure that everyone stay clear, and then we fire. But it also means after every shot, what do we have to do? Push the cannon back to its position. You can start to see why we need so many men. So you push it back, and then we go like we did just before. First step was to écovionner. That is to clean the inside of the cannon. We just fired a large charge of black powder. Inside there might still be fire debris. If you then load up another gargoose, it might explode while reloading. To avoid that, you have a metal spiral to clean out the cannon, and also a bucket with water and a type of sponge to better clean it and to cool off the cannon if need be. Then we bring up our ammo from the ammunition box. Now that ammo back in the day looked like these big linen bags, cylindrical linen bags, with inside your black powder, a wooden structure, and attached to that the cannonball. So it's one big package that we can then load in one go through the mouth, ram it down to the end of the barrel, because at the end you have that little hole, that touch light. I use that big needle to pierce through the linen to expose the black powder, and then I can put in my fuse to then ignite and launch the cannonball. These cannonballs could be launched up to 300 meters a second. Again, try to imagine how that looked like. These soldiers marching towards these cannons, they definitely see the cannonballs coming at them. But before they know it, their arm, their leg, their head, a couple of meters behind them. With the pure shock and force of these cannonballs raging through the ground. Now the French cannons here at Waterloo will be less efficient, but still very deadly. And like I showed, especially those canister and grape shots will be murderous here on the battlefield. If you saw the movie inside or saw the panorama, you see the depiction of these French cavalry charges, where thousands of cavalrymen will be lined up to charge up this hill, trying to break the British Allied line. Of course, very easy targets for the British cannons. Now what do the British do? Once the cavalry is too close, they will leave their cannons behind to go hide in the squares. So the French have the option to try and disable the British Allied cannons. Now, let me ask you a question. How do you disable one of these cannons? Any idea? How would you disable a cannon like that? Any thoughts? So take off the wheels. What else?
You blow it up?
I'll blow it up. Let me clarify. The enemy is just over there shooting at you. So if you're holding a big keg of black powder and they shoot you, you are going to be the one that blows up. So blowing it up might be a bit too dangerous. Now some people are saying taking off the wheel. It is an option, but that's actually something the artillerymen themselves do to make sure that the cavalry doesn't run off with it. However, taking off that wheel does take time, so I needed a quicker and more efficient way.
Take the ammunition?
Well, that's something that they did themselves, and normally the artillerists, they brought it with them. Sorry? You can stuff stuff in it, but then they can just pull the cannon like that and clean it out. Turn it around, well yes, but then again you have to use the equipment. There is a way that takes less than 5 seconds. What is crucial in the reloading of that cannon? That little hole at the end. So what are we going to do? We are going to spike the guns. A couple of people in each regiment will be equipped with these small needles, these spikes, and a hammer. They dismount with the spike in the hole, hammer it down. Cannon is now completely useless in less than 5 seconds. If you would have to remove that as spike, you would have to use acid to pour on it to rip it out. But so for the rest of the day, that cannon is useless. In less than 5 seconds, it's disabled. But this is something that the French cavalry simply did not do here. Were they too overconfident, thinking victory was already at hand? Did they not have the equipment? We are not sure. Nevertheless, what was the result? Every time the French retreated to regroup for a new charge, well, what are the British Allies going to do? They just walk back to their cannons to continue blasting. You can imagine after more than 2 hours with these French chargers, the French cavalry will be shot to pieces by the British Allied cannons and infantry squares. Making one of these many mistakes of the French that will of course cost them the battle here at Waterloo. Any more questions? Nog vragen? Well, if not, thank you for your attention. Our next activity will be Peloton School. If not, thank you very much for your attention. Dank jullie wel. Thank you.
Zou dat mogen?